Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Coin News Extra Interview Session. It's a program where we invite expert analysts in the blockchain and the fintech space to come talk about matters arising and their view on particular issues in the ecosystem. So today we'll be talking about economic development post COVID. So with me, I have a good analyst in this ecosystem, an expert, I must say, in this fintech space and even in the economic and the business sphere. So I have with me Richie Santosdiaz. He is the contributor, head of Middle East and Africa, the Fintech Times. Richie, you're welcome to CoinNewsExtra.
Thank you for having me, and good attempt at the last name because it's not easy unless you speak Spanish. So my name is Richie Santosdiaz. People know me as an economic development expert. So I have kind of multiple hats, but in terms of advisory in the context of economic development diversification, in that space, I've advised various governments and private companies as well, but mainly governments. And then obviously, as you introduced me, I'm the head of the Middle East and Africa for the Fintech Times, as well as the Fintech Power 50. The Fintech Times is based in London. It's the world's oldest newspaper dedicated exclusively to fintech. In its current form, it was founded in 2016, and we cover all aspects of fintech and its wider glory, I'll say. And we launched our Middle East and Africa section this summer. So until then, we weren't really focusing much on the Middle East and Africa. It was mainly Europe, Asia, North America. But now we also put the Middle East and Africa farther. And I believe you're based in Nigeria, so it's good. We've also started looking a lot in Nigeria. We're very pleased with the fan base growing there in terms of the content, and obviously in the Middle East as well too. So it's great to understand everything that's going on there. And in a nutshell, that's my background.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. So before we proceed, could you be able to tell us a brief about yourself, your journey in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I look really young, but I'm not as young. But I was based, so I'm from the US with this like complicated background. So with my career essentially started in the most relevant terms. So I was living in London for the last 7 years, and then I pretty much settled in Dubai last year. So in terms of my background prior, mainly in London, I'm XK Consulting Group, which is one of the world's oldest management consulting houses. So it's along those like McKinsey type. So I was there as an economic development expert with them, and obviously I continue to do that to this day, but not with them as a management consultant. And then obviously, like I said, with the fintech ecosystem as well with the Fintech Times. So just to speed it up, that's kind of essentially was my career. So it's management consulting, then thought leader in economic development, and then obviously with fintech as well, incorporating into that atmosphere.
A lot of experience and different backgrounds with that, and you've been able to be to different nations. That's a very nice one.
Seven. I lived
So
in seven. Yeah.
yeah, I checked your profile. You said you lived in over 5 nations, so that's very impressive, and you've been able to have different backgrounds. Interesting. So, looking at this topic, economic development, seeing the COVID, what it's doing. So, do you think diversification will help in economic development of nations and businesses this period and after this COVID, most especially in the Middle East and Africa?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even before I got involved with the Fintech Times and Fintech Power 50, even in London, obviously with my economic development hat, I was very interested in everything that was happening, not just in the Middle East, especially in the Gulf, where I'm based at the moment, but obviously as well in Africa. And even before COVID, this was a topic, this is why economic development is always going to be important, because especially now, where economies, governments need to diversify and plan for their futures. And even before COVID, you saw diversification starting to happen in Africa. I'm going to talk about Africa here, for example. So, and it's so vast, so I'll give some examples. So for example, Angola, as we know, has oil. Same thing with Nigeria. But oil does not last forever, and the price of oil the past few years has changed, right? It's not certain, it's not high, it's volatile. And especially now with COVID, it's demand because we were working from home, it changes, right? So point being is the Angolan government, as people who follow it in terms of an economic development point of view, has also started to start diversifying their economy as well. Obviously, I believe it's over 90% of their economy is through oil exports, right? So obviously now it's starting to look into other sectors, one of which is actually fintech. So they've been building their own kind of fintech ecosystem alongside the financial services industry, because actually they do have major banks, and they've started selling that off slowly but surely to make sure that the future golden economy is actually one that's diverse in terms of sectors. It's not 90% or whatever figure it is reliant on oil. It's actually a portfolio, I'll say, of a strong economy where you have uh, parts of it can be oil and gas, parts of it can be financial services, parts of it can be other professional services, and then obviously your especially the bread and butter in terms of an economy where it's highly skilled innovation and highly skilled know-how would encompass things like tech and fintech. So obviously, because it's mainly a highly knowledge skilled sector, there's a lot of you need smart people to create these solutions, and it's great for an economy. Obviously, you see the hubs of the likes of the United States, the UK, increasingly in this region. You're starting to see some native homegrown solutions, not just in fintech, but in tech in general and other sectors where it's the IP came from here, right? So essentially, not just using Angola as the example, we see this across in other economies, and I'm speaking about Africa just because obviously I'm really interested in the African continent as a whole. So you see that in Egypt as well, who has their own national strategy, where they're also looking to diversify their economy as well and prepare for the future. You see those similar strategies as well across the Gulf, and obviously in your home country of Nigeria. Obviously, you see a growing interest as well to diversify your economy. And when I'm saying this, obviously governments are interested whether they have designed a strategy, or implementing it, such as in the cases of the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, but maybe in the early stages where they're thinking about the strategy. How do I prepare my economy for the future where I'm not just relying on a certain sector to boost that, but also to create jobs and economic growth, which are the two fundamental principles of economic development. So in a nutshell, fintech plays a huge part of that increasingly, and COVID just accelerated it further. I think it was always on the to-do list before, but I think with the wider digital transformation that's needed across the world, COVID this year has accelerated that by far as a necessity.
Interesting. We're talking about the fintech space. We've seen a lot of acquisitions in the fintech space, most especially coming from
Mm.
Africa and Nigeria. A lot of fintech startups being acquired for a good sum of money. So we feel when you talk about fintech, it's a very good diversification for uh, companies and businesses, even nations. So we want to be able, apart from this diversification, talking about fintech, what are other steps to take for economic development? What other steps should be taken?
Yeah, I mean, going back to my previous point earlier, I think from a fintech and economic development wider point of view, I think governments and the private sector have a role to play in that. Obviously, any government, has to create a strategy and prioritize it, and it has to encompass all aspects of an ecosystem. Whether it be boosting, you have to think of it from a wider term in terms of putting yourself in the shoes of company, whether it be the innovator that's creating the solution, whether it be in fintech or tech or whatever sector, um, as well as all the kind of the ecosystem that supports that company or that innovation. So it could be the things like legislation or funding or talent. For example, in Middle East and Africa, there's a huge, as we know, like in Africa, historically many immigrate. The best and the brightest would immigrate, right? It's especially in tech, and not just Africa, but across the world. They flock to the clusters in the world of tech, often that's Silicon Valley or London or New York, right? So it's not just that, but across every sector that's out there. So you and you know, so for example, with talent, how do governments foster innovation and talent where they people can be educated, have the experience to be entrepreneurs one day, to have the access to be able to launch a business, but most importantly, not just to do that, but to keep it in their country, right? You don't want, because then it's a brain drain. So talent's a big one, and like I was saying earlier, with other things that can be done in economic development. So for example, like legislation. So how do you facilitate it easier for an innovator and all the wider ecosystem to facilitate business and make it easier? So in the case of fintech, how does a future fintech company, whether it be native or abroad, uh, able to develop their technology in the fast, efficient way where they can get the license to operate? Do they have a regulatory sandbox to trial their product? You know, these things. And obviously, in terms of other examples, I could keep going on and on, but these are just some key examples where, from a wider point of view in economic development, how does a government facilitate that? And then obviously as well for the private sector, in that ecosystem, to also engage and be active in that, you know, to be a part of the whole journey and not just waiting for the right time, but also fostering that communication, addressing their concerns, and being an active player in the ecosystem. I think for both the public sector, government, and then the private sector, you need that support in terms of facilitating economic development.
Interesting. And that's very, very nice seeing how things are going and your explanations about the way forward.
Mm.
So we're looking at seeing the pandemic now. Are there people are in shock and people don't know what exactly, some businesses don't know how to move forward. So what are there some things, seeing that you are part of the FinTech Times, are there some things uh, the FinTech Time is playing or putting in place to make things happen, and also the role the FinTech Times is playing in this ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, with the fintech Times is a media outlet at the end of the day, right? So I think the part that the fintech Times team, mostly based in the UK, um, we tell the story of fintech. We tell the story of fintech in terms of what's happening, but not only what's happening, but our analysis as well, our kind of exclusive analysis of what's happening in the region and globally. Sorry, and in wherever, whether it be Singapore, whether it be Hong Kong, whether it be London, whether it be New York, whether it be Dubai, whether it be Nairobi, whether it be Lagos, right? So we try to talk and just educate the audience in terms of what's happening, whether, like I said, in terms of latest news analysis and kind of future trends that we are known for. So especially now with COVID, obviously, we noticed as well that there's been an interest in not only those in the fintech space, you know, fintech entrepreneurs, fintech people that work in fintech, or government entities that are involved in fintech, but even just the average person now. I think people are starting to realize the importance of fintech. And even those three that I mentioned before, if they were still hesitant to accelerate, I think COVID has just shown that what we've seen is people are interested, obviously, because it affects everybody, and we just didn't realize it before if you were in the space. You know, for example, I was talking to somebody earlier in terms of paying, you know, in Dubai and many parts of the world due to COVID, you have to pay contactless, right? So with your phone, you know, I had you know, I have the new flip phone, by the way. It's pretty cool. I so you know, for example, I pulled out my wallet. I was telling the story earlier. I pulled out my wallet because it was being fixed, and my credit cards were stuck because I hadn't pulled out my credit card from my wallet in months. You know, because I've been so used to just Samsung Pay or Apple Pay, whatever you call it, that in everyday life, that I, as a consumer, I'm not speaking as expert, as a consumer, as everybody in the world is a consumer of some sort, we are using fintech without realizing it, right? So this especially now has elevated that, and I think we've seen that with the fintech Times, you know, from the everyday person, and obviously those in the sector as well, in terms of realizing that digital transformation is here to stay. It was always a need to transform digitally before COVID, but I think this year has accelerated that out of need, as we know. You know, for those who have been fortunate to do business remotely due to COVID, I believe, you and I, for example, we're very fortunate that we can work remotely, virtually. Um, Aspects of fintech have been needed, that to help us work. And I think now with us just talking about it's allowed for those who weren't really into fintech to understand that through the Fintech Times' analysis, and articles, and news, and whatever, that it's a sector that's been booming for a while, but now it's out of necessity in many cases.
Thank you very much. It's been an amazing time out with you, Richie Santosdiaz. I said I must pronounce your name well now. Thank you very much for joining us today on CoinNewsExtra interview.
Thank you. And to be fair, when I was moderating a panel at Nigeria FinTech Week, I think I got the names right too, because Nigerian last names are pretty long too. So if you got my name right, so it's great. I mean, it's not an easy one, but it's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.